There's a small piece of heaven in southwest Wyoming where my heart and soul feel a higher calling to conserve the beauty of all God's creations for Muley fanatics and our future generations.
The Muley Fanatic Foundation fights for the future of mule deer, also wildlife, habitat, and hunting heritage. Learn more at muleyfanatic.org and tune in to the Wild Things and Wild Places podcast with Joey, Chris, and Janet.
Today, we're going to talk about some projects that we've been part of this summer. This next episode of Wild Things and Wild Places, Muley Fanatic Foundation. It's just the staff of us three, Janet, Chris, and myself, Joey. We did not have a guest on this episode. Just, I think for the purposes of just, we want to discuss our experiences on some field trips we went on just recently. Starting in June, we went on some fawn captures with the Monteith shop up in the Wyoming Range, just in the western part of Wyoming. This has been a long research project, 12 years. I think 2013 is when it started. A lot of components have been added to that project since, and one of those was the fawn captures. And then in July, Chris and myself joined Kevin Spence, biologist out of the Green River Regional Office for the Wyoming Game and Fish. Chris and myself joined Kevin Spence, biologist with the local Wyoming Game and Fish Regional Office in Green River, Wyoming. And he just took us on a little bit of a tour on the first day to show us a cheatgrass project that we were involved with and funded just south of Rock Springs, Wyoming. And then we looked at some juniper treatment or juniper removal that we funded a couple of years ago, or approved the allocations through our Mule Deer Days event. We went and took a look at some of the stuff where they had removed the junipers and had some piles, and what some of the future stuff they are looking at to do. And then the following day, we traveled north to the Cokeville, Wyoming area to take a look at some of that mowing, sagebrush mowing that we've also funded. We purchased a large mower for those projects, and he just showed us some of the aftermath of the mowing they did a few years ago. And then there was a crew out there during that time. They were doing some more mowing, and this is all in mule deer critical winter range. And then he took us on a quick tour up on the mountains on some future projects where they're going to remove some pine or spruce trees and stuff.
Conifer encroachment.
Conifer encroachment.
Get biological here, Joey.
Yeah,
come on.
sorry.
Use the correct terminology.
Sorry, that's why we maybe should have Kevin here so he could correct us on some of these terms. But
I can correct you on it. Don't worry.
Yeah, I forgot you have a biology degree.
I do.
Anyways, and then the following day there, Janet was able to participate in vegetation.
The excitement.
Yeah, in the Wyoming Range. This is just another piece of the puzzle for when they do some of that mule deer research. They go and collect some samples of different species of plants that a collared mule deer, doe mule deer, is foraging on. And she probably has some good official terms for those plants that she saw. Anyway, so we just thought it'd be good for us to share some of that experience. And people have asked me many times, like, what projects we've participated in or funded. And so I thought it'd be a good little podcast between the three of us to just talk about the most recent ones and what we participated in this summer. Is there anything else I'm missing as far as what we attended?
Yeah, we put up the Muley Gap
gates.
So what was that, in June?
Yeah.
I went up on Saturday. I don't remember the date in June. But anyway, Bill Ames devised that Muley Gap gate. So it's essentially a metal, I don't know, what are those 8-foot long metal pipe gates that are designed to the top rail can be moved to the side, and it just allows safe passage for deer through fences, pre-existing fences that sometimes hinder their ability to get back and forth in critical winter range. This was in the dry piney area between Big Piney and LaBarge, Wyoming. So it's a very crucial area for wintering mule deer that come out of the Wyoming Range. So we installed 14 of those gates that day with the crew. And then we have another 7 remaining that they're going to do here in a couple weeks. So that's a great opportunity for anybody who wants to get involved and go help. I think it's August 9th, 7:30 in the morning.
Yes.
In the Dry Piney Creek area. So yeah, if you're interested, I won't be able to attend that one, but I know they're going to get those remaining 7 gates put up and some old fencing taken out too. So,
yep. Yeah, that's a good project. And thank you to Bill Ames for coming up with that great idea and fabricating it all. And I know he wants about 100 of those total to be placed, but he's a quarter of the way now, I think. So,
yeah. And the critical thing is with those gates specifically is that like all the ones we put up that day were all in private fence lines.
mm-hmm.
So there's cooperation from those landowners that own those fences. There's cattle in the area. Obviously, during the time when the cattle are there, the gates are closed, that top rail is closed. And like Bill explained, where these gates are critical and the most beneficial is when the snow gets too deep for these deer to jump the normal fences and they come across these muley gap gates that have the top rail moved across and out of the way. They can just easily go over that. There's no obstruction. They're not going to get hung up in fencing wire or anything else. So that's where they're really critical.
Yeah, it's a great idea, great thing. So
yeah,
be interesting to see where else we can get some of those. I think there's a lot of locations that these could be very useful for.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
who's been helping him with those?
as far as material and all
yeah.
that, I really don't know who put together this last group. I know Wire Brothers has been huge. They've fabricated a bunch of them, donated all their material, all their work hours, everything. So, and they may be included into a total of 100. I'm not sure, but I think this big group that they just finished, I think they were part of that.
Yeah, they were, because Bill went down to get them in Rock Springs.
Yeah.
I know he has been also helping fabricate some of those by himself, putting them together, but I think he said he can do like 4 or 5 in a day where those guys can do 20. So
Yeah.
they're set up to do those much quicker.
Yeah, so kudos to those guys for contributing all that material and all that time, and that's a great business. So if anybody that works there, the owner of Wire Brothers, please, by all means, thank them for all their efforts on that. Okay, the fawn captures. It's always exciting, an adult Easter egg hunt. You always wonder, will you be successful in finding those fawns? And there's a reason why you don't find them, because they're hidden very well. But I don't know, Janet, you can start on that little venture we went on with Kevin Monteith and his kids. And joining us on that trip also was John Grossnickel, Sweetwater County Sheriff, and our board member of Muley Fanatic Foundation.
Should I start with where we were at the house and we were told we were going to cross a creek? And
Yeah.
then when we got there, it was a raging river.
Yeah. Interesting how they lied to us so we'd be motivated to go on this hike.
Well, and it was because I know Rebecca was there and she was talking about the fawns we were going to try to capture, and she didn't seem totally convinced we would find them. What was it, 2 days before the vet had come out? So they weren't sure if it came out premature or what. So I know we went back in to try and find them, and it was quite the hike in. What was it, 3.7 miles in?
Yeah.
3.8 miles
3
in.
point something,
Mhm.
And we got to the so-called creek.
It was running a little high.
Yeah. Yeah.
And luckily Kevin had some water shoes that we could all throw back and forth across the river.
Yeah. I think it was like size of the Mississippi.
Only came up to what, our waist. Well,
Yeah.
my waist.
John's head.
Yeah, then when we got across there, it was only, not even 100, 200 yards up the hill.
Yeah.
And Kevin was using the telemetry, and so we located the mom and started spreading out. And what did you say, Chris? You figured we'd never find them?
You're talking, was slightly over a 3 acre. Well, maybe we should back up a little bit. So when we talk about capturing fawns, we're talking about capturing or attempting to capture, or the crews attempting to capture the fawns from the collared moms, the radio collared moms that are part of the Wyoming Range deer study group. So the females, the does are collared with satellite collars. So I think Joey, they send off a signal. I know they can adjust it, but during the spring, I think when they're having fawns, they drop a satellite marker every 2 hours.
Yeah.
So they can really dial in where those does are at. And they've done so many that they have some really good indicators with the Monteith shop guys and gals that they can pretty much predict that the does either had fawn or fawns or is getting ready to. Obviously, they know from capturing the does in the March timeframe if they have singles or twins because of the ultrasounds that they do. But yeah, they weren't 100% sure because they'd had a lot of problems with the vaginal implant transmitters this year.
Yeah, which come out, readings. Which those are implanted in the doe at the spring captures. And then when that doe gives birth to a fawn, that vit comes out and then sends off a signal. And that's how they know that there's a good chance that a fawn or two were born at that time.
Right.
Yeah.
And being this year, they had so many issues with them. They were coming out, but the births weren't happening, right? Or they weren't sending off the signals, correct?
Yeah,
right.
Some of them are malfunctioning.
Yeah, so it was a matter of seeing them cluster in the stuff they were getting back from the fawn or the does, so then they would go in, and that was this case as well, is that they thought maybe it came out prematurely or it wasn't working correctly, so we were going in with the hopes of finding the fawns.
Yeah, and we found some interesting information yesterday when we saw Rebecca that Kevin found the vit but made no attempt to find the fawn, so I think he was truly waiting for us to arrive the next day so we can cross that Mississippi River in minus 40-degree water.
Oh, it wasn't that cold. It was a little chilly.
Who are you asking?
It was a little chilly.
Yeah. Well, if I recall, the only one that screamed was Chris when he touched the water.
Took your breath away.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was good. And it was awesome that it was so quick when we found them too, because we started that grid line. And as always, with our experience, it's usually, we'll probably walk a mile this direction, come around and go a mile another direction, and then probably come back and do another mile walk and be unsuccessful. But fortunately, within 5 minutes, maybe?
Yeah, if 5 minutes.
10 minutes,
yeah.
Both fawns were found. One got up and started running and then dropped and hit again. And so we were able to find both of them and did the proper procedures of handling and everything and doing the testing and recording all the data for that fawn and fawns, both female.
Yep.
And then, you release them back to where we found them and carry on. And then the mom will return and lick both fawns really clean and everything. And just, those fawns will just continue on to the natural state.
Well, and was it Kevin that was telling us during that the reasons why the fawns drop down is because their heart rate increases so much?
Yeah.
Is that what I remember? Is it increases so much that it's almost like they pass out? They don't literally pass out, but it's like they just...
Yeah.
It decreases.
Is it decreasing?
Yeah. It drops way low, and there's a scientific term for it that I couldn't even begin to tell you what I remember it being. But yeah,
Thought you were good at that.
it's their defense mechanism. Well, I could make something up.
Yeah, I'm sure you could.
And then
Yeah.
Kevin would correct us.
Yeah. So yeah, they go into that. That's their defense mechanism, is just they drop to the ground, real low heart rate. And yeah, so when you then start to try to handle them, they don't move. Whenever they're doing stuff, they try not to overhandle them, but they have to take a blood sample, a little hair sample, measurements, fit them with their own radio collar, weight, all that. So all that data that they get from that fawn. But yeah, they just laid there. They just are just still, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And what did Kevin say the reason was for putting the cover over their eyes? It just keeps them calmer, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it just calms them down and everything. Everything they do, and wearing gloves, all that stuff, to just so there's insurance that there's no diseases or whatever transferred. And yeah, they just follow all procedures that need to be done just to protect everything. And that's why Game and Fish are always recommending not to handle any fawns or young ones in the fall, in the spring, by any public and that, because it's just for their safety. So this is done for research, so everything's just really done the proper way to protect all that stuff.
And we're happy to report that they are still doing really well.
Yes.
They're very healthy, they said.
Oh yeah, very healthy, growing.
Yep.
Yeah. And then after those two, we actually had to go recapture another fawn. So there were another set of twins that were born. Both of those were males?
Yes.
So one was smaller than the other. So is what happens. So these collars, just so everybody's aware, these collars have like elastic, and they actually expand as the fawn grows. So some of the stitching breaks as their neck grows and that, so it stays with them until they recapture them in the fall and put on an adult collar. But so when they're really little, they have to put on a really small collar, and then they have to recapture them again so they could put on the next level of collar for that fawn. So we had to go recapture one, and successful finding it. Of course, it was easier because of the telemetry of the signal off the collars. But recollared that one fawn.
I think it took us longer to find that fawn with the collar.
Yeah.
Than it did for us to find the two.
They just blend in so well. Yeah. So, but unfortunately, not the one that we captured, but the brother did not survive. It was taken by a coyote.
Yeah, predator.
Yep. So unfortunate there was one loss, but that other one is doing healthy and growing.
Yep.
And yeah, Rebecca said they're all doing really well. So, and interesting information yesterday too that Rebecca provided is there is one doe that has still not gave birth. And shoot, when did she say she had the one last? She gave birth last year, I think like July 15th,
16th, yeah.
Yeah. So this mother has done this in the past, but this year it's even later. So who knows when she might have that fawn.
And she said the fawn last year is doing really well. So
yeah,
even being born late.
Yeah. So those fawns definitely born that late do have a little bit more of a challenge of survival, just because of predators and trying to survive the winter because of just that time period of growth. So, but yeah, those are always fun. Anybody that's interested in participating in any type of those captures, fawn, the adults, whatever, you learn a lot, and it's very good to have that hands-on thing. So it's a great experience. So yeah, if you're definitely interested, that would be something to do, especially in the summertime on the fawns. It's just a challenge, and it's really fun.
You definitely have a different outlook on it. Assume you know what you're getting into when you go in, and this was my first year doing this, but it was definitely an eye-opener on, it's like you want to take those fawns and you just want to put them in a bubble and make sure that they grow to adulthood, all the stuff that comes with it, predators and just the environment and disease and everything else. And you just hope, but you have this special bond with them, I guess, when you have a huge respect for mule deer anyway. And then after this, it's amazing. I just look at it totally differently, and how much more I just love mule deer and the stuff they go through. All animals have a lot of things against them, but it definitely makes you look at everything differently.
It definitely makes you appreciate the technicians, whether it's the Monteith shop, and I know sometimes the Game and Fish do things similar to this, but you do become attached to these things, even though you're only spending a couple minutes with them. And the does as well, these animals that are captured twice a year, and they track and follow them. It would be hard. I don't know if I could do it nonstop,
Yeah.
just having that interaction, and then you watch something happen to them. It's life, it's nature, but yeah, it would be tough.
Yeah, and look at the hours and work that all those young men and women do to gather all this information. I mean, it's nonstop, and whenever one of them's a mortality, they got to go in quickly and find out the cause of death. And it's not just the summer, it's through the winter. And it's just almost a year-long process. And with Rebecca, she's had, during that bad winter of 22-23, she's had to grab her snowshoes and trek on through 5 foot of snow and cold and try to retrieve, that mortality. And yeah, it's late at night and coming back out in the dark with a headlamp. I mean, it's incredible what those young folks do to get all the research that we need to find out information that's important, and kudos to them.
And research is never done. I know that people think, we get to a point where we could probably stop doing it, or but I don't think research is ever done, because everything changes all the time.
Yeah.
So you have something that's this year is one way, and next year it could be totally different. And if you aren't collaring these animals and monitoring them and stuff, how would you know that? How would you know that what's changing, or maybe their food source is changed and how they're surviving and stuff, to be able to help these animals with migration and everything else that research brings up. So it's like, I always feel like research is never done.
Yeah, I agree. Look how long they've been doing that project,
Yeah.
and it's just incredible that they've gone through 2 really bad winters, and that just helps them learn even new things and everything. It's something new is discovered through research all the time. So,
in that 22-23, they lost almost all of their collared animals.
Yeah.
And so they had to capture. So they're starting over with other ones that they haven't been monitoring for the last 5 years or so. So they're starting over with these new ones, and they could be doing something totally different than the other ones did.
Anything else you want to touch on that, Chris, or anybody?
No, I think that's good.
Let's see. Okay, first, Chris and I, as I mentioned, went with Kevin Spence. We went and watched some cheatgrass, I guess, spraying from a helicopter. It was cool. That was one thing, and I'm glad we got the opportunity to see that helicopter at work, because, I've seen photos, and I always wanted to experience and watch how that works, and it was pretty cool. And there was a natural fire that occurred, I think that was
5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Yeah, Laney Rim fire.
Yeah, yep. And there was a lot of cheatgrass encroachment on that fire, so we funded some money to this project, and process happened a couple weeks ago, and it was just cool to see that chopper go down through a canyon, come back up over the hill, and just do a complete line back and forth and spray everywhere where there was cheatgrass. And and you can see where it was really intruding on a lot of good bitter brush and stuff like that. So these are very important. And correct me, how do you pronounce it?
Rejuvix.
Yeah,
I
Rejuvix.
think is the.
Yeah, it's a new chemical that is improved on this cheatgrass removal. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say. I guess it was just a cool experience to see that helicopter at work finally and witness just in person.
Yeah. Cheatgrass, as hopefully folks know, is an invasive grass. It grows everywhere. It chokes everything else out. It's not really palatable to anything, not even domestic livestock, cows, sheep. It's green for a little bit of time in the spring, and then it turns purple, and then pretty quickly it dries up, and it just creates even more of a fire hazard, if you will, on the landscape. So yeah, we're always trying to isolate big areas of cheatgrass, which that Laney Rim fire, I don't remember what was the acreage on that.
I can't remember.
I think it was in the thousands, wasn't it?
Yeah, because it went
several thousand acres that they treated for that. And again, this new chemical is designed to go into the soil, and they've made these chemicals and keep improving them so that the retreatment or treatment frequency goes way down. I think that Rejuvix is like 5 years if it's applied correctly, and so that just gives native forbs and brush a chance to gain a foothold and come back, and then once it's healthy enough, it can outcompete any kind of the grass that comes back. So
yeah, and it's very interesting to see how when Kevin Spence would point out certain pieces like that bit of brush, and in the middle of it was some cheatgrass coming through, and you can just see the effects it had on that bit of brush. It was pretty much dead in the middle where that cheatgrass was coming through. And of course, the nerd that he is with the plants, he was giving off all the terms possible for each and one of those plants, and I wouldn't remember a single one or what the proper name is for some of those. But yeah, it was very interesting to see the impacts that it had on some of that forage. And it's going to be very interesting to see, or go back to that probably in maybe even 3 years to see how that's all recovering, because this area that we're talking about was prime mule deer habitat, and now you don't. We didn't even. Did we see a deer through that area?
No, I don't think so. It could have been because the helicopter was buzzing 30 feet over the ground, but
seen a lot of sign of elk.
Yeah,
just the populations of elk in this area have increased tremendously, and as a kid in this area, I never did see any elk for a long period of time, and it was all mule deer, mule deer galore in all that country. And yeah, just to see it all burned up, but elk, they'll survive through some of that stuff. But it was very interesting to see how those elk were foraging or browsing on that bitter brush and some of that mountain mahogany that's very important to mule deer. But they nipped off so much of that, and it's gonna, as Kevin said, it's gonna prevent some of that forage to mature and grow like where it needs to be. And that's what mule deer really need, especially in the springtime when that stuff's all greening up. That's a very important plant for them to feed on and make it very for their young, especially those does. That's during the time they need to start getting some healthy food.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was a cool thing to see.
Yeah.
I was glad we got there just in time when that helicopter was doing the work, because we were worried about the wind coming up and then preventing it to happen. So,
right.
And then after we saw that, we traveled a few thousand miles through rough road. Yeah. And an extra cab pickup truck that had no shocks, I think. But we survived and got to another point where we contributed $90,000 for a juniper removal project just south of where we were at with the cheatgrass. And it was nice to check out and see all the work that they did on that. And that is to remove juniper trees that are intruding on sagebrush habitat, and to remove those junipers, or else if anybody is experience some of those juniper forests, they'll see that wherever they're really heavy and thick, there's no sagebrush or really very little other forage that lay in the base of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're very selective as to how they treat those juniper removal areas. They, like you said, the main area they focus on is the junipers that are encroaching into the sagebrush habitat surrounding those juniper stands, and then they leave above a certain size juniper tree because they are important. They do provide cover, shade, those type of things for deer, elk, and every critter that lives out there. But yeah, like you said, it's when you look under those heavy, big juniper stands, there's nothing. There's nothing that grows under them. So it's just, and they also, juniper trees they suck a tremendous amount of moisture out of the ground.
Yep.
So that's when they get into those sagebrush areas. If they get too populated, they'll just kill all the sagebrush around them, and eventually you've just got a thick stand of juniper that doesn't really provide much for habitat for wildlife other than some cover. But there's plenty of juniper out there. So
yeah, I thought it did a fantastic job. It looked really nice, clean, everything, and they have some piles of junipers that they have to burn out there to remove those piles. And then Kevin showed us some future locations, some more acres of where it needs to be done as well. And no, I really enjoyed that trip. It was great to experience all that, see really what they do and how they do it, and chainsaw cutting up and removing each one of those little junipers and putting them all into one particular spot to pile up. Yeah, I thought it was great.
Yeah. When they're working on BLM land, which most of this is primarily, BLM is directing the crews and the game and fish, like, this is how it needs to be done. So sometimes it's manually chainsawed and piled. Other times they use a masticating big machine that just basically shreds the juniper trees and just kind of throws it out there like mulch. So depending on the area and the prescribed treatment of how they want to do that dictates how they're going to handle it. But yeah, so if you're down in Southwest Wyoming, down in that south of Little Mountain, Iron Mountain area, and you see all these hundreds of piles of now dying, dead juniper branches and trees, just know that, yes, the BLM will be back in there probably this winter, I would assume.
Yeah.
And they'll be torching those off and burning them, so it'll get cleaned up.
Yeah, and they want to try and get that cleaned up first before they move forward to some more acres. So
I have a question, since I wasn't there. Do they worry about it spreading? Like, once they cut them down, like sometimes when you cut stuff down, the seeds will spread to other things. Do they not worry about that with juniper?
No, I don't think they don't seed like that. And that is a good question, because I've never asked, how does juniper spread? Is it off of a common root like an aspen? I don't believe so.
Yeah, I don't know.
Clearly they're pretty good at spreading. I mean, that's obvious when you go into places like that, but I don't think they produce seeds necessarily like a flower, like other things will. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to ask Kevin on that one.
I was just curious how, being that you have the piles, or they mulch it, like not worrying about it spreading so that it continues to grow there. I was just curious.
Yeah. Yeah. He never indicated any of that. It just, when they take those machines and mulch them down, they're gone.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It was a long trip in a bouncy truck.
Yeah.
But it was a good one. Definitely great to see. Next day, same truck.
Except I had to ride in the back, and it's not conducive to being a taller guy in a little back seat.
Yeah. So we traveled to the north of us, our office, which is towards the Kemmer, Wyoming, and Cokeville, Wyoming area. There's a lot of really it's a large critical winter range for mule deer. A lot of those deer migrate from the Wyoming Range and into this area, and it's definitely needs some treatment. So they have mowed sagebrush in a, what do you call it, a drunk pattern?
A mosaic. Yeah. So
Drunk.
yeah, no, I mean, Kevin said it's referred to as the drunken tractor.
Yeah.
So it's just like a maze of how
Yeah.
they go back and forth, and there's a science to it.
Yeah.
Again, every area, kind of like the juniper removal, that area dictates how much they're going to mow. So
Yep.
it might be 20% in one area. They may jump over to another area and do that area may call for treatment of 40 or 50% of the brush mowed. And I had no idea until we got up to some of those high points on those ridges and could see. You're talking thousands of acres
Yeah.
that they have mowed and are mowing now. I was shocked at how much work has been done over there to increase that. And yeah, we probably need to explain why they do the mowing in the first place.
Yeah, so some of the top parts of some of those plants, and including sagebrush, like even it's unhealthy sagebrush, needs to just be kind of mowed down to a certain height so that it'll allow them to start to mature and grow into the height or whatever capacity that forage needs to be. Some of that sagebrush is just similar to the juniper and encroaches onto some other forages like bitterbrush, which bitterbrush is just one of those plants that is so important to mule deer. It's pretty much their favorite plant. Spring, summer, fall, winter. Sagebrush is very important in the winter. So this allows some of that sagebrush that is either dying off or whatever, it will be mowed away, and you do a certain height with that mower so it doesn't get the young sagebrush plant to be mowed. And there's, I don't know how many species of sagebrush.
Oh, I didn't know there was I always just referred to it as there's a big sagebrush, there's a little sagebrush.
Yeah.
There's a greener sagebrush,
greener, a browner,
a grayer sagebrush, but yeah, it's all different species. And
yeah.
like Kevin is so knowledgeable, like
Yeah.
he's a habitat biologist, so it's his job. But yeah, as we're driving, he's pointing out, okay, there's black sagebrush. That's critical to mule deer specifically at certain times of the year. And there's rabbit brush, all sorts of different species of sagebrush and forbs. You're just talking like woody plants that's what mule deer eat. They're not grazers, they're browsers.
Yeah.
They're very selective in what they eat, but that is what's critical for them.
Yep.
And so, yeah, and then they always have to be aware of sage-grouse habitat, and that's why they a lot of times will leave those existing stands or areas of the sagebrush in their original state, is so that they still provide a certain amount of not only cover, but mature sagebrush and mature forbs and plants that all these animals rely on. But like the areas we looked at that have been mowed in the last couple of years, it was just crazy to see within those mowed swaths of sagebrush, everything coming back up, nice new plants. The leader growth on those plants were, even Kevin was shocked given how dry it's been this year, of how tall the leaders were, which is critical because it's got to be, that's what they rely on being able to get to when the snow starts piling up. So the taller that brush is, in a lot of places they can get to that, but they do rely on those nice new forbs and sagebrush and things as they're starting to come up and regrow.
Yeah, some of those I thought were weeds when I always looked at them, and they're an important plant for mule deer. I was like, huh.
Yeah. We're walking through those areas, and Kevin's pointing out, like you said, I'm like, what's this weed, Kevin? Oh no, it's this. It's this, and it's critical. Mule deer love it. I knew lupine. Yeah, the lupine species are pretty critical. It's something deer love, especially. Kevin explained it's in the fall that they really key in on those after they've lost their purple flowers. But yeah, there's yeah, it's just so diverse of what's in that. You're driving by or looking at some of that and just saying, it's a bunch of sagebrush, but it's way more complex than that.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're ever in those areas, you'll notice it right away, because you'll see like a worm type pattern wiggly through a lot of that sagebrush that's up there, and you'll immediately know what we're talking about when you see that. And it was cool too. We even jumped some sage grouse, and
Yep.
so it just shows that it was beneficial for them. So it was nice to see that.
Yeah, and we saw a lot of antelope that were specifically feeding in those mowed swaths. That's where they were at.
Yep.
Again, keying in on that young plant that's coming up and eating that new growth. So,
and then we got to see the crew that was there that day. Unfortunately, one of the mowers had broken down, so they only had one mower at the time. But it was interesting to see them go on and see how it worked and stuff. And kudos to those game and fish employees for sitting in a hot tractor during that day. And then kudos to the BLM guy who has to follow him behind on a ATV with a water sprayer in case something catches fire. I just thought, all day long in that heat.
Yeah,
and,
it was like, 90 some degrees.
Yeah.
And we're under a red flag warning that day. So the BLM requires them to have them out there on standby just in case they spark something up and start a little fire. They can immediately put it out. So.
Yeah, so we got to follow up with Kevin on that mower too. If we can find some funding, if it's no good anymore, we told him we'd try and see if we can figure a way to get him a new one if need be. So hopefully got a fix, but if not, we'll check into that.
What's the name of that? The Game and Fish has a specific crew, and they go all across the state, and they have more than one crew, but they go all across the state and do these different things like mowing. They do things that have to do with water, whether it's creek enhancement. There's a lot of work they do, and they're traveling all throughout the year, but primarily in the summer months. I know there's a name for that.
Yeah, I
crew,
can't remember.
But yeah, so those are the guys that are out there driving those tractors in a drunken fashion.
Yeah, very interesting, but great. Another just great experience and that on that project that we've been a part of and continue to be a part of. And then to end the day, we went up to the high mountains to look at a upcoming project that we are going to help fund as well. And what was it? Oh, yeah. When they burn it, we want to definitely experience that.
Yeah. So, Porcupine Creek conifer encroachment project, which is I don't know. What's that? 20 some miles probably north of Cokeville on the Smiths Fork.
Yep.
Big north-south running ridge that's critical because it's in the migration path of all the Wyoming Range, Salt River Range deer that come down, and there's some big pockets of aspen stands that have over the years just been encroached by conifers, pine trees, and this project aims to get in there. It's a 3-part project. They did part 1 or section 1, the south section last year, cut all the conifer trees out of the aspen stands and the standalone trees and laid them down uphill. And then they'll do the next 2 sections, the middle section and the north section here. They should be starting here pretty quick.
Yeah. That'd be also interesting to watch, seeing those guys just spanned out into different locations with chainsaws and cutting each one of those down and moving them here, moving them. Yeah, that'd be, again, some hardworking fellows on that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be, but yeah, we all thought when they burn that up, it'll be pretty cool to watch. So we thought about setting a lawn chair up on this ridge and just...
Yeah, so we went to the top of this on a not very good 2-track road.
In a so good truck.
Yeah, in a not very comfortable truck. And we're going to give Kevin a guilt complex if he listens to this. But, hey, it's a Game and Fish's truck. But, 3/4 ton truck, doesn't ride real smooth. But, yeah, so it puts you on a opposite ridge from the ridge that they're treating, and you can see the whole project. So yeah, that's going to be very cool. There's some natural fire breaks that they know that they have in place due to just the way that ridge is laid out. And some other things they'll do. They're going to cut some fire lines and everything else prior to the date that they light it up. But that Kevin said that would be in June, which I was surprised by.
Yeah.
I thought that would be just before winter type burn. And he said, no, it'll be in June because that's the point at which the conifer trees are at their lowest moisture content.
Yeah.
So that'll promote not only the dead stuff that they burned, but any of the live stuff. I think they're cutting, was it just everything under 8 inches?
8 inches.
8 inches in diameter,
Yep.
but then that also promotes them thinning out the other trees naturally when they start that fire. And then the hopes are then the aspen regrowth occurs along that whole ridge. So
Mhm.
Well, I say that we grab Chris's side by side and we go up there.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
That'd be good.
long haul, man.
It is a long haul.
All the way up that road. And I wish I could remember the name of the gentleman who's allowed them access into this.
Yeah.
They worked out an agreement with the Game and Fish to provide an easement
Mhm.
because this is a critical area that goes from private to BLM land. And then as you go up that Smith's Fork area, it then turns to the Forest Service land. And so really it was choked off if that landowner didn't allow access and that easement to take place. But he was extremely generous and said,
Mhm.
I don't want the public at large to not be able to access this. So he provided that easement, and that's how they're accessing this area to do this large prescribed burn eventually.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, enough of what Chris and I were on. Janet, tell us all about vegetation.
Yeah, I mean, I know it sounds super boring, but it's actually pretty interesting. I think so anyway. We went up to the Cottonwood area, just, what is that? North of
Big Piney.
Big
area.
Piney
Yeah.
by Daniel, I guess.
Yep.
So we went up there. It was just Rebecca Rafferty and I from the Monteith shop that went up. And she had one doe with 2 fawns that she had been watching them and where they were eating. So she picked them out. And I guess they do this with all of them.
Yep.
Is they just watch where they're eating and stuff. And then they go there and they just check the vegetation of what they're eating and all that. So got up there.
And is it also picking up
Poop.
poop? Yeah.
Yep.
The glamorous life of wildlife researchers. Yes, picking up the deer poop.
Yeah, so she had the doe on telemetry and we were just trying to get close. But we were trying to stay out of her way as well. We didn't want to disturb him at all. Started walking down this little 2-track and all of a sudden this little fawn just came running at us. Full speed, running straight at us, and then he just took off to probably the west of us, headed towards Mom because that's the way the telemetry had her tracked at. And then so we were trying to get around them.
And that was a collared fawn.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
From this year.
Yep. It was her collared fawn. And then probably not even a minute later, here comes the twin running across the road as well. And he just went over to where Mom was at and he's collared as well. So we went over there. It's really interesting though, but they take a tape measure. She gets in the area where they'd been eating, browsing, stuff like that. And right where she had picked the spot at, there was a fresh pile of poop. So she proceeded to pick that up and put it in a baggie to test that. And then they take a tape measure and they go out, I think it's kilograms or kilometers or something. So you do it every half kilometer and you see what is there. So like geranium is mule deer's favorite thing to eat. So there was geranium, and I did not know that there's 25,000 different grass species, but there's tons of different grass species and she was naming them all off and I was just the writer. So she was having to spell half of the stuff for me because it's in the Latin form, I think. So I think the only one I remember was Pinus, and it's pine.
Greenius gracius.
Yeah, so we did that area, and then she had 2 other spots that she wanted to do. So we did another one, same thing, just every half. And then she has to look at the sky, see if there's any cover, anything for the deer. What the cover was as they were grazing through there and stuff. Thing I did, she pointed out, which was interesting. She could tell the difference between what the cows have been eating and what mule deer have been eating. So how they've kind of, the way it's nibbled down, and how the cows just go in there and pretty much level everything. And then how the mule deer just pick certain parts, but then they leave other stuff, I'm sure just so it'll grow, or because it's used, they eat it in the fall or whatever, so they don't pick it at that point. And so, yeah, then like I said, we went to another area, raspberries, strawberries. To me, it's interesting because it's just stuff that I don't do every day. I could never remember any of the names. I think, like I said, in the 25 slots that you have to fill out for what's there, she had to spell almost every single one of them.
And she explained why they do this, right?
Yeah. So it's so that they know what they're eating, she had a big long thing, which Rebecca would be great, even though, like I said, it's boring, but to have her on to explain why they do the research they do. But yeah, so they can see what they're eating in the spring, see what they're eating in the summer and fall, that keeps them, the growth of the babies and stuff like that. So, but there was one section that was confusing where she had been hanging out for a certain period of time, was all deadfall. There was absolutely nothing in there to eat at all. So, and the points that she'd picked had been a couple weeks before. And so she didn't know if maybe there was a storm that went through and they were held up in there, or if they were just in there just relaxing for the day or whatever, but there was nothing to eat in there. It was just all deadfall. So we thought that was interesting, and she thought it was as well. It's funny because this place that we had went, the very last place on that side that my husband and I camped was exactly where she took me. And there's this spring kind of pond thing. We used to call it the crack spring because the moose and the deer would come in there and almost gorge themselves. But they would eat there for hours. And so that was one of the areas that the doe and the fawns were at, was in that section. That was the third place that we'd went, and it was in that section where there's something in there. I don't know if there's a mineral or what. And when I was telling her about it, she thought it was very interesting. So she said she'd look into it a little bit more. But
so this is you're talking about the plant life around this little pond?
Yeah. Yep.
Huh.
There was, and you can even see around that pond, you can tell there's been moose in there, there's been elk in there, deer in there. So there's something with these ponds that the minerals, and it's that black goopy mud that, so I don't know what it is, but she said she was curious about that. So she would look into it. But
so do they take plant samples at the same time, or do they not?
No,
just measure and look?
Just measure, and she just looks and sees what is growing in that spot, in that hole. But it's a big long line, and then she just goes every half and looks and see what's growing there, and we just write it down.
Discover it in the fecal matter.
Yeah, and then they'll look at
the fecal in the lab and see what species of plants they've been feeding on through their poop.
Yep. And the first area that we were at, where the doe and fawns were, they were watching us. They were up on the hill, and we weren't close to them, but she was definitely keeping an eye on us on where we were at and stuff. And so when we walked to go to the second place, she just watched us. Rebecca was telling me a story about how that deer has no tail. And so it had an injury at one point or whatever, but yeah, she has no tail, but it hasn't affected anything that she does. She's raised this is her second pair of twins now. So yeah, but yeah, we did that, and it was and it wasn't too hot that day, but of course we were in the trees all day too. So we didn't have to hike up any huge mountains or anything. Rebecca was gentle with me.
drove right to it.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, just another thing of they've learned these animals for quite some time. The ones that survive winters year after year, they are able to learn a whole bunch of information about these for 4 to 5 years. And again, like this one's missing a Of course, they always refer to them as whatever their collar number is. So yeah, that's just another thing is like they get to know that animal and get to experience the generations of the fawns year after. It's pretty incredible. I always enjoy listening to some of the stories and learning about each one of the deer that they've worked on and stuff. So it's always a great thing.
She was teaching me how to use the telemetry, so that was pretty cool. Just being able to, because she had me on the doe at first, seeing where she was at, and then once the fawns had ran across, she had me change them to the numbers of the fawns, and so it was just, I don't know, it's something I don't deal with every day. So it's cool to me to see all that stuff and
just education.
Yeah,
education of that's why we want to be part of that stuff, so we can learn more about the species that we're trying to protect. And everybody, if anybody has the opportunity to be part of this stuff, it's incredible what you learn, and then you can look at that species totally different.
Yeah, and that's the big thing is you learn so much. Yeah. You would never know that they go out to see exactly what they eat. And what was she saying yesterday when she stopped by, that those 2 fawns that we had put the collars on, they were up doing the veg on them yesterday, but they got to drive the 4-wheelers in.
Yeah.
The river's now a creek and it's gone down, so they can drive through it on the ATV trail.
And that section is open now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, I thought it was all great stuff, and this is something that we're going to continue to do and be part of some of these projects that we fund. There's some more cheatgrass that's going to be happening here soon. We're probably going to be participating in some of the steeljack fencing that we've been part of, which the steeljack fence is placed around an aspen stand to protect it from the browsing from or grazing from elk and cattle, and allows that aspen stand to mature and get tall so the deer can utilize it. So we'll be probably doing some of that stuff here in the near future. Hopefully some of it just needs repaired, and we'll be part of that. We're going to contribute some more funds for the material of that stuff.
You want to just touch briefly on what the Mule Deer Days PAC Project Allocation Committee funded?
Yeah.
Those projects.
So our all volunteer project allocations committee approved their projects just yesterday, and they're going to contribute to I'm looking it up real quick right now so I don't find anything that's wrong. Let's see if I can find it real quick.
Sorry, I put you on the spot. I should have.
Yeah. Should have gave me some heads up so I could see this.
No, I figured you'd have
conservation
it
easement. Yeah. No, I slept since yesterday, so not so much. So they are contributing $30,000 to the Green River Island conservation easement. That $30,000 is going to add on to the $20,000 that we are contributing from headquarters here. So that's a $50,000 total to that conservation easement. The PAC contributed $24,840 to the Southwest Middle Ridge Habitat Restoration Project, and then $15,000 to the Rock Creek Wind Farm Mule Deer Project, which that's just going to provide some collars and some research work in an area where they're placing wind farms.
They're studying the impact of what those wind farms that have been in place for a while now, how is that impacting mule deer?
Yep. So, and conservation easements are very important, just as you mentioned earlier about that landowner providing that easement. So we have access to it and that. And at the end of next month, we will actually touch on everything about a conservation easement. We're going to have a guest speaker with us, and she'll provide all that. In fact, she is with this organization that has this conservation easement. So
Jackson Hole Land Trust.
Jackson Hole Land Trust, yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, she'll touch on the importance of easements and everything about them. So we won't touch too much into that. But yeah, it's nice to finally we got those funds allocated and committed, and a little bit of funds left over, about $5,000. So we're probably going to use some of that for what I just talked about, steel jack fencing and just some other small projects that need a little bit of funding. But yeah, we got a lot going on. Plus, in September, we have our putting the U and Hunt program, taking our youths with life-threatening or terminal illnesses on the hunts. That's our annual event at the end of September. Getting down to the wire on that too. So that's another thing that we'll probably discuss later on too, probably pre and post. We could maybe do some podcast on pre-hunts and post-hunts and have some of those kids on here, and they can talk about their livelihood and the challenges they face every day. So anything else you guys have?
That's the things that we're doing from headquarters. That doesn't touch on all the things that the chapters are funding, which a lot of similar stuff, habitat work, research work, youth stuff. So yeah, a lot going on.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening to another episode of Wild Things in Wild Places, the Muley Fanatic Foundation podcast. We'll look forward to our next one next month on conservation easements.